Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to welcome you to the Department of Local Government Finance webinar about the 2021 sales disclosure data submission process and the compliance reviews that the department conducts involving sales data. My name is James Johnson, and I serve as the director of the DLGF's Data Analysis Division. This webinar, which will last roughly an hour, will focus on three different areas related to sales disclosure data. First, the information covered in today's webinar will provide you with a greater understanding of the different items that you will want to consider while you complete your review and validation of 2021 sales disclosure transactions. Additionally, we will discuss the process for uploading sales data to the sales application site and gateway, as well as how to affirm the sales data that you have uploaded. Finally, we will discuss the compliance review process that the department conducts on the sales disclosure data during the months of January and February. One other quick item to note about today's webinar: we certainly welcome your questions. If you do have any questions that come up during today's presentation, please type those into the Q&A chat box on the right-hand side of your Teams webinar window. If time allows, we'll try to address some of those questions at the end of today's webinar. Additionally, we'll be compiling the questions and the department's responses to those questions into an FAQ document that will be posted to the department's webinar page in the near future. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into our presentation. So in terms of a deadline to keep in mind when thinking about sales disclosure data, that date is February 1st. Per Indiana code, that's 6-1.1-5.5-3, on or before February 1st, county assessors are to submit all sales disclosure records that have the conveyance date during the preceding year. So what that means for your 2021 sales, you have until February 1st of 2022 to submit all sales that occurred in 2021. Now, while Indiana code talks about the deadline for submitting your sales data to the department, and again, that's February 1st, there is an administrative code that the department oversees or handles, and that's 50 IAC 26. This administrative code governs the standards for software systems and the data files that you submit to us on an annual basis. And in 50 IC 26, there is a portion that says sales disclosure data must be submitted on a weekly basis via the Gateway Sales Application site. Now, it currently says weekly, but we're very mindful that a weekly data submission of your sales disclosure data is very, very, very ambitious and probably not very realistic. So we have been in the process during the course of this year of updating that rule to change the weekly reference to a monthly reference. So if I remember correctly, we just had the adoption meeting on that rule change, and that should take effect on January 1st of 2022. So at the beginning of next year, the requirement will say monthly data submissions to Gateway instead of weekly submissions. So something to keep in mind going forward, that you will want to upload your data on a monthly basis to Gateway, but you have until February 1st to get all your sales data in for the previous calendar year, which will be 2021. You have until February 1st of 2022 to get that data submitted to us. So before you actually submit your sales disclosure data to the department, we have a few things that we ask you to keep in mind while doing your review of the data and while you're typing it into your local software system. We ask that all sales disclosure records that you enter into your local software system have at least, at the minimum, one buyer, one seller listed for each sale, that all the dates are valid for the date fields on the form. So that would be things like a sales date, a conveyance date, transfer date, the date the form is received, that all sales records have a valid sales price, that the parcel numbers associated with each sale, that they are valid parcel numbers and they have valid state assigned taxing districts assigned to them, and also that the parcel numbers have valid property class codes assigned. Another thing that, as an assessor, you will want to keep in mind when reviewing your sales disclosure forms that you receive in your office, assuming that the form is indeed a completed form, you'll want to verify that question number 11 under the assessor section of the form, which that's part 2 assessor section, that's on the top of page 4 of the sales disclosure form. That question, which asks, is the form complete? You want to verify that that is checked yes. And the reason you want to verify that that question is checked yes when you're data entering your sales disclosure information is that in order for your sales to be pulled as part of our review process, that question has to be checked yes. If it's checked no, we're not going to be pulling that from your data set when reviewing your sales data as part of the compliance review process. Another item to keep in mind when working through your review process of sales disclosures is what we call the state sales disclosure fee revenue reconciliation. That is definitely a mouthful, so you could abbreviate it for short. You could call it fee reconciliation or revenue reconciliation. This is essentially a process that involves the partnership between the county assessor's office and the county auditor's office. And essentially what it comes down to is if question number 12 under the assessor section of the sales disclosure form, that question is state sales disclosure fee required. If that question is checked yes, then the county auditor's office will need to verify if the fee has indeed been collected on that particular sales disclosure transaction. If there are differences or discrepancies between question number 12 under the assessors section and question number 7 under the auditor section of the form, that question is the state sales disclosure fee collected? Then those discrepancies could potentially result in your county falling outside our allowable tolerance for our revenue check that we run on your sales disclosure data. And talking a little bit more about this fee reconciliation process, there are certain sales disclosure transactions that are eligible to receive or to be assessed the state sales disclosure fee. And half of that fee is retained by the county, and the other half is remitted to the state as part of the settlement process. Historically, that fee has been $10. So of the $10, the county would keep 5, and they would send the other 5 to the state. But due to a legislative change that happened, that went into effect, I think, July 1st of this year, the state sales disclosure fee was increased to $20. So the county will keep 10 of the $20, and then they will submit the other 10 to the state as part of the settlement process. For county auditors, if there are any county auditors on this webinar currently, you want to verify that you've completed the fall 2021 settlement process with the Auditor State's office, and that you have sent to the state any additional state sales disclosure fee revenue that you've collected since the spring 2021 settlement, which typically happens in May-June timeframe. The fall settlement process is going on right now and typically wraps up around mid-late December. So for county auditors, again, to emphasize, you want to verify that the fall settlement process has been completed and that you've sent all the state sales disclosure fee revenue to the state as part of that process. The portion that should be sent to the state, that is. In order for the data team here at the department with our review of the sales disclosure fee revenues, we are asking the county auditors to email a copy of their sales disclosure fee fund report to the department's data inbox. And that address is data@dlgf.in.gov. This fund report that you're sending to the data inbox, it should provide a transaction log of the state sales disclosure fees that you collected during the previous calendar year. And it should also include the amounts remitted to the state during both the spring and fall settlement periods in 2021. So in terms of the process for this report and how we treated this report during previous review cycles, It was traditionally something that the data team would ask of the county auditors on kind of an ad hoc basis. So when we would be reviewing the sales disclosure data submitted to us and we came across a discrepancy in our revenue check, we would then reach out to the county auditor and ask them to submit their fund report to us. Well, during the past couple of review cycles, we've taken a proactive approach, and we've asked all county auditors to send this report to us, usually in early mid-January, so that we, the data team, has it at our disposal, and then we can use it as a reference if need be when going through the sales disclosure data and trying to reconcile potential discrepancies with the revenues that we're seeing. And we'll continue with that process for our review coming up next January and February. The one thing to note about this process for county auditors is please do not send this report to us prior to December 31st of 2021. The reason we say that is because this report should include a full year's calendar transaction of sales. So wait until after December 31st, 2021, and after you've completed the fall settlement process with the Auditor State's office, then you can email this report to the data inbox. And again, that email address is data@dlgf.in.gov. So as for county assessors, once your office has completed your review of the sales disclosure records, and you also completed the reconciliation process of the fees, the sales disclosure fee revenues with the county auditor's office, you should be ready to submit your sales data to the department. Starting with 2021 sales data, all counties are now using the same process for submitting that information to the state. Prior to this year, there used to be a couple ways of submitting sales disclosure data. There were a handful of counties that were using the assessor edit side of Gateway SDF. So they were going into Gateway SDF and typing in all their sales disclosure data and entering it via that method. So that was one way to submit your data. And then the majority of counties use a third-party vendor such as Xsoft or AS2 or Guts to handle their sales disclosures. So they would enter their sales disclosures into their local system and then generate a few data files from their system and upload that to Gateway SDF. So those are the two previous ways for submitting your sales disclosure data. Starting this year, starting in 2021, all counties are now using the Gateway sales application site to submit their sales data to the state. And a few things to keep in mind when you are uploading your sales data to the Gateway sales application site. You want to ensure that your sales data includes records for the entire 2021 calendar year. So the records should go from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st of 2021. If you are a county that has been doing incremental uploads of your sales data throughout the course of this year, you don't necessarily need to do another complete upload of all your 2021 sales by the February 1st deadline. That said, you're welcome to do so if you would like, particularly in the event that you need to update any information for sales that have been edited or updated since they were last uploaded to the Gateway sales application site. So let's say that you uploaded sales back in April this year for the first quarter of 2021. If there have been any edits or changes to any of those records that you uploaded back in April, you can do another upload of those records to the Gateway sales site, and that will essentially just update the values for the records that you previously provided. And then one thing also to point out in terms of your sales data, you do not need to submit or email the files to the Legislative Services Agency. The only thing you need to do is upload your sales data to the Gateway sales application site. Once you upload it to the Gateway sales application site, it's in our database. We can then make it available to LSA for their disposal. So you don't need to send your sales files to LSA. So let's talk a little bit about the actual Gateway sales application site and how to upload your sales data. The screenshot here you'll see is the login page for the Gateway sales application page. And the Gateway Sales Application site has the same URL as the old Gateway SDF. So that is gatewaysdf.ifionline.org. It's the same URL. And when we launched the new sales application site earlier this year, I think it was in late March or early April this year, we gave all county assessors default submit rights to the sales site. So all county assessors were automatically able to log into the new Gateway Sales application site and submit their data. The password, the username and password for logging into the Gateway Sales application site is the same information that you would be using to log in the Gateway for submitting your annual PWO report. So same username, same password for the PWO report and for logging in to submit your sales. Just it's two different URLs though. That's the one thing to keep in mind. Now, as I said, we gave county assessors, all county assessors, default access to jump into the system and submit their sales data. If there is a deputy in your office, or if you use your sales disclosure software vendor to submit your sales, you can give them access to upload. The only thing is that to give them access, we ask that you submit a request to the department support team to have an account created, or if you also need a password reset, they can handle that as well. So please send those requests to the department support team, and that address is support@dlgf.in.gov. So once you log into the Gateway Sales page, this will basically be what the home page of the Gateway Sales application site looks like. You'll notice that it's much more streamlined compared to the old Gateway SDF site. All you'll have to do on the home page is simply select the year that you're interested in. In this case, it'll be 2021, and then click on your county name below. And once you do that, that will take you to the actual page or site where you will upload your sales data. So a few things to note about the file upload page here. For submitting your sales data, you have to make sure, or you have to ensure that your data files are zipped prior to trying to upload. The file upload page will not accept non-zipped files. So you will have to make sure that your data files are zipped into one overall file bundle before you upload them to the Gateway Sales application site. And the other thing to note about that zip file is that the file, the data set must include all 5 files in order for that bundle to process successfully. There used to be only 3 files that you would upload to Gateway SDF. Well, the 3 files are still there. You still have the cell disk, the cell parcel, and cell contact file that will be part of the zip file. But then there are also 2 additional data files that pertain to the addendum forms that will need to be included. So even if there aren't any records in the addendum files, you still need to include those as part of the overall zip file bundle that you're trying to upload. So to upload, what you want to do is click on the Choose File button there in the middle of the screen. Once you click on Choose File, that will open up a window that will allow you to select the files, the zip file that you're trying to upload. And then once you select the zip file, you click the Upload button. And then once you do that, you'll notice that if it's a successful upload, at the bottom of the screen under the Upload Status column, you'll notice that there is a green valid status. That means that that zip file bundle that you just uploaded processed successfully. And another way to tell if your files uploaded successfully, over on the right side, under the download column, you'll notice that there is a link that you can click on. That's basically the name of the zip file that you uploaded. If you wanted to, you can click on that and actually download the data files that you just uploaded. Completely optional, you don't have to do that, but if for whatever reason you need to download the files that you just uploaded, you can click on that link. So those are the 2 things to look for. The most important one being the green valid status under the upload status column. and then looking for the ability to download the files under the download column there. That would indicate that your zip file went through successfully. Now, let's say there was an error in one or more of your data files. You will actually end up seeing a red invalid status under the upload status column there. And also you'll notice over under the download column, whereas under the previous slide, you saw the name of the zip file that you just uploaded and you were able to download those files. Well, if it was an invalid processing issue, then you won't be able to actually download the files that you tried to upload. So that's going to be labeled as NA. And then again, under the upload status, that's going to say invalid, indicating that there was an error in at least one of your files that's preventing the zip file from being processed. So what do you do if you notice that you're getting an invalid status when trying to upload your data? You want to go over to the action column over on the far right and click on the details. And once you click on the file details screen, that's going to take you to the page where you will see each of the 5 data files that were included in that zip file. And each file will have a status associated with it. And under this particular scenario on this screenshot, you'll notice that all 5 files contained errors in them because they all have a red failed status. So each file that I tried to upload as part of that process failed. Now, it's possible that you may only have one data file that contains issues and the rest processed successfully. But here's the thing with trying to upload your data. Even if there's only one file with one error, with one record that's erroring out, that will prevent your entire zip file from being processed. So each of the 5 files on the screen will need to read as a green valid status in order to process successfully in the database. So what you want to do from here on the file details screen is for each file that is labeled as having failed, has a red failed status, we want to go over to the action column and then click on the view error link. And then once you do that, that's going to take you to the list of errors that are associated with that particular data file. Now, depending on how many errors are in each data file, there might be potentially multiple tabs to click on. This particular screenshot only shows one page of errors, but if you had 50, 60, 70, however many number, if there's a lot of errors for that particular data file, you may need to click on the various numbers or scroll through the various numbers to see the full list of errors that are associated with that data file. What we recommend when reviewing this information is getting a screenshot of all the errors associated with that file and then sharing that screenshot with your self-disclosure software vendor so that they can work with you to help troubleshoot any errors that you're finding in the data files. And then you can make those corrections and then generate the new files and do another upload attempt, which will hopefully process successfully on the next attempt. So after you have done a successful upload of sales disclosure data for a particular month, so let's say you've completed your review validation process of November sales, and you have successfully uploaded all your sales for November, what you want to do is then affirm that you have uploaded the complete reviewed validated data set for that month, for November in this case. And this affirmation process, it's really quick. It's very simple. It's just a 3-step process. And I want to point out that this affirmation process is something new for the Gateway Sales Application site. For submitting your sales in general, it's brand new. What this process does is takes the place of the county assessors having to email the department's data inbox to verify that you've submitted all your sales for a particular conveyance range. If you recall during previous review cycles, what we have asked county assessors to do in the month of January, when you're going through and reviewing and uploading your sales, after you've uploaded your sales to Gateway SDF, we would ask you to then send a separate email to the department's data inbox and simply verify that you've reviewed all your sales, you've uploaded all your sales to Gateway SDF, and you are now ready for the data team to start its compliance review of the sales. So that was the previous process. This affirmation process actually takes the place of that. So it basically cuts out that manual need to send us an email that you have uploaded your sales and affirmed your sales, that you have uploaded your sales and you're ready for us to review that information. Now, one thing regarding this affirmation process, and it is important to note that all 12-month sales must be affirmed in the Gateway Sales Application site before the data team will even start its compliance review of the sales data. So when you are uploading your 2021 sales to the Gateway Sales Application site, you want to verify that each month has been affirmed in the system, because we will not actually start looking at your sales data until all 12 months have actually been affirmed. So as I mentioned earlier, the affirmation process is really quick and easy to do. You can access the affirmation page by the same page where you're doing your file upload. So if you recall back on the file upload page, there is a blue button on the file upload page that says file upload. Right next to it, there's an affirmation or affirm button. You click on that affirmation or affirm button, and that will take you to the actual affirmation page, which is shown on this screenshot. The first step you'll want to do is click on the edit button under the action column for the applicable month that you're trying to affirm your sales data for. So in this case, it's pointing to the month of January. So that's step one. And then step two is simply checking the affirmation box under the affirmation column for the month of January. And after you do that, you'll click on the save button. So after you click on the save button, which is step three, you will notice a date and timestamp appear for the month of January. That means that you have affirmed your January sales. Again, that's basically saying that you have reviewed and validated that month's sales. They've been uploaded to the Gateway Sales Application site. And again, emphasizing this process, you will want to do this for each of the 12 months after you have uploaded every month's sales for 2021 into the Gateway Sales Application site, because the data team will not start reviewing your sales until all 12 months have been affirmed within the system. So that is the process for submitting your sales disclosure data to the state using the Gateway Sales Application site. Let's talk now a bit about the actual compliance review. So you've submitted the data to the state. The ball now is in our court and the data team's court to start reviewing the data. Again, under the major assumption that you have also affirmed your sales in the Gateway Sales Application site. So we like to think of this compliance review process that the data team conducts on sales disclosure data as kind of focused around two main questions. And those questions are, has the county submitted all the sales for a specified conveyance period? In other words, so when we're January, February of next year, we're going to be asking, did the county provide us with all their sales that occurred in 2021? And also, we are seeking to answer the question of, does the data that the county has provided or submitted to us, does it appear to be complete and accurate? For example, do all records contain buyer and sellers? Is there a sales price listed for all records? Are the taxing districts and parcel numbers included and valid for all the sales? We kind of consider the compliance review process that the data team conducts as the primer in the ratio study approval process. In other words, the review process that the data team does on the sales data basically helps ensure the underlying foundation of sales data that's used in a county's ratio study. Now, one thing to emphasize as part of our review process, the data team's review process does not attempt to answer if a certain sale should be marked valid for trending or if a certain sale should be included in a ratio study. those two questions are much better directed towards your assessment field rep. Those are questions that the assessment team, that's much more in their wheelhouse. So the data team's compliance review process of sales is not going to really touch on those two items. If you have questions about those two items in particular, please reach out to your assessment field rep for further guidance. So when the data team completes its review of the submitted sales for a particular county, it's going to email the county 2 documents with its findings. One of the documents that the county will receive is an Excel file, which we call the Sales Issues Workbook. And the workbook provides basically an itemized breakdown of all the records that contained either possible or probable errors when we were running the data through our compliance checks. And then the other document that will be part of the email the county receives is the Sales Disclosure Compliance Report itself. And that's the PDF document that will provide an overall summary of the analysis that we did with your sales disclosure data. And more importantly, it also will contain the official compliance status of your data, whether it was deemed as compliant or deemed non-compliant. Talking a little bit in further detail about the sales issues workbook, again, this is the Excel file that you'll receive after the data team has completed its review of your sales data. The sales issues workbook will contain up to 6 separate tabs. And each of those tabs will provide a list of the records that generated errors, whether there are certain or possible errors, when the data was being run through our compliance review process. The 6 tabs that you may see on your workbook are the Missing Critical Data tab, the Single Parcel Sales Duplicates tab, the Multi-Parcel Sales Duplicates tab, Valuable Consideration tab, the Part 2 County Assessors Checks tab, and then the Part 3 County Auditors Checks tab. Now, the reason we say that the Issues Workbook will contain up to 6 separate tabs, if we were running your data through our compliance review process, and let's say we did not notice any errors whatsoever except for on the Missing Critical Data tab, that's going to be the only tab you will see on your workbook. So if you don't see one of these tabs listed on your Issues Workbook when you receive it, that means that we did not find any errors for that particular portion of the checks that we run. In very, very, very rare instances, there might be a county that does not receive an Issues Workbook at all, and that would indicate that you basically have a very pristine data set, that there weren't any errors noted. I think maybe during my time here as the director of the Data Analysis Division, that might have happened only once or twice. It's very, very rare that that will occur, but again, it's not outside the realm of possibilities. So if for some reason you don't receive an Issues Workbook as part of our findings, that means that we didn't find any errors in your data when we were reviewing it. So I guess it's a goal to aim for, but yeah, it's a rarity when that happens. But going back to the main point here, your Issues Workbook will have up to 6 separate tabs, but it may have less than that if there weren't errors found for each of these different types of checks. So talking in more detail about the various tabs on the Issues Workbook, if I were to kind of prioritize the tabs on the Issues Workbook and say, okay, this one is the most important tab to focus your review on, I would say the Missing Critical tab is by far the most important tab on the Issues Workbook. And that data tab is going to contain records that may be missing or have mismatched information between the sales data files and the parcel file that you submitted to our office earlier this summer. And we do perform checks on both single and multi-parcel sales for this particular tab, and we separate them out. So on the Missing Critical Data tab, you're going to notice a section for single parcel sales towards the top portion of that tab, and then you're going to have a section towards the bottom for multi-parcel sales. The reason why we emphasize the importance behind this particular tab is because if the number of records on this tab exceeds our 2% tolerance, then that is an automatic non-compliance status for your data. So this is the one tab that, as part of our overall review, can result in your data being deemed non-compliant, meaning that you have to go back and make corrections and resubmit your data. So in addition to the missing critical data tab, we will also have potentially, or you'll find potentially on your issues workbook, the single parcel sales duplicates tab. And that tab is basically a list of records that we think are possible duplicates in your system. Generally, these sales will have different SDF ID numbers associated with them, but they're going to have the exact same parcel number, exact same conveyance date, same sales price, and the buyer and preparer information are going to be exactly the same. So it looks like it's been double entered into your sales disclosure software system. On the same token, just like we have a tab for the single parcel sales duplicates, we're going to have a tab on the issues workbook for multi-parcel sales duplicates. It's the same process or the same concept as the single parcel sales duplicates. The only difference on the multi-parcel sales is that the records on this tab would pertain to multi-parcel sales. The single parcel duplicates tab is going to pertain to exclusively single parcel sales. And then there may potentially be a tab on your workbook labeled as valuable consideration. And this is a tab that will list records or parcels sales that have a sales price greater than 0, but are marked as no for valuable consideration. Now, the two new tabs that may potentially show up on your issues workbook, and they're new for this upcoming review process, I should say. One of them is the Part 2 County Assessors Checks tab. So this is a tab that will list possible discrepancies between items that are marked in Part 1 of this SDF compared to the information listed in Part 2 of the SDF. So Part 1 of the SDF is the portion of the sales disclosure form that's completed by the preparer. It's kind of the front end facing part of the form. And then Part 2 is the portion of the SDF on the top of page 4 that the county assessor fills out when they're reviewing and validating the information. So we're going to look for discrepancies that might exist between information in Part 1 versus Part 2. An example of this would be like an individual SDF, sales disclosure form, that contains multiple parcels located in different taxing districts. The guidelines for handling these types of sales is that it's completely fine for one sales disclosure form to be used for multi-parcel sales if, and this is the important part, if there is a single conveyance document that is conveying all the parcels together, and the critical piece here, all those parcels are contiguous and contained entirely in the same taxing district. So under that scenario, it's okay for one sales disclosure form to be used for multiple parcels. So we've included a check that's going to look for multiple parcels and verify that they are in the same taxing district if they're on the same sales disclosure form. So that's just one of the examples of the checks contained under this particular tab. And then the other new tab that we've added to the issues workbook is the Part 3 County Auditors check tab. And this will list any records where there are potential discrepancies between records marked as requiring a state sales disclosure fee and the actual amount of the fee collected. So that is kind of a summary overview of the issues workbook that you will receive as part of our review process. Now we'll talk a little bit about the compliance report document. Again, this is the PDF that will be attached to the email. It's 2 pages long, front and back, and while we have made some changes or kind of shifted a few things around on the report for the upcoming review cycle, the overall gist, the overall information contained on the compliance report will be the same as what you've been used to seeing for the last 2 or 3 years now. So at the top portion of the compliance report, this is basically just kind of summary information, kind of like the header record, if you will. It's going to have your county number and name listed. It'll have the date of the compliance report. It'll have the date the sales files that you submitted the information in the Gateway Sales Application site. Most importantly, it's going to have the official status of your sales data. It'll say either compliant or non-compliant. And then it's going to have a couple of line items that will provide you additional feedback on here are things to look at in your sales disclosure data. And for further information, please refer to the accompanying sales issues workbook that will be part of the email. So that's the very kind of the upper quarter portion of the compliance report. And then as you move kind of down through the compliance report, the next portion pertains to the checks that we run on your sales data to verify that you have submitted all your records to the department. And the main check that we do for verifying that information is our revenue check. We have made a few updates to our revenue check process for the upcoming review cycle. We've tried to make it actually a little more logical and direct. Under previous review cycles, this was kind of an estimation game on our part. What we would do in the past is basically look at all your submitted sales records and see which of those records were marked for valuable consideration and marked as being fee eligible. And then we would take that number of records, multiply by 5, and say, okay, this is the amount of revenue we think your county should be submitting to the state. And then we would compare that to the actual amount that was reported to the state through the settlement process. So it used to be kind of it was an estimation process. It was far from exact. For our revised revenue check, we're getting rid of estimation. We're looking directly at what's been entered on your sales data and doing our comparison based on what you've actually entered on your forms. So line number 6 here on this screenshot is going to show the number of sales disclosure records that are marked as requiring the state sales disclosure fee. This is item number 12 under the Part 2 County Assessor section of the form. And then line 7 on the screenshot is the number of SDF records that are marked as the state sales disclosure fee being collected. That's going to be under the county auditor portion, which is Part 3 of the form. That's item number 7. So again, these are just straight counts coming directly from the data that you're uploading to the Gateway Sales site. And then line 8 here is a simple percentage calculation. It's going to compare the amount of fee collected to the amount of number of records where the fees being collected compared to the number of records where the fee is eligible. In this particular instance, it looks like the county was collecting nearly 98% on those forms that were marked as fee eligible. So that's what line number 8 is showing. Line number 9, this again is coming directly from the sales data that you submit. It's a total amount of sales disclosure fee collected based on all your sales for 2021. So we're going to look at the amount that's listed under item 1 in Part 3 of the sales disclosure form, and we're going to add all those numbers up to come up with the total. And then we're going to compare that to actually what was submitted to the state as part of the settlement process in June and December for this year, and come up with an overall percentage. So line number 10 is going to be the revenue that was actually reported by the county auditor to the auditor state's office for the settlement process. And then line number 11 here on the screenshot is going to show that percentage. Typically for line number 11, we like to see, or our tolerance level, I should say, is 90% to 105%. The reason why we don't anticipate a full 100% spot on accurate mark is because the settlement process that county auditors complete, it does not cover like a complete calendar year, does not line up exactly with the complete calendar year for your sales data. The county auditor is going to be completing their fall settlement probably in early December, mid-December. So that information will be reported to the auditor state's office by early mid-December. But for sales disclosure fees, you're still collecting on those through the remainder of the year. So you still have another potential month of fee collections that you'll be collecting fees for, I should say. So that's why we don't expect a full 100% accuracy or 100% on line number 11. Sometimes it happens, but typically we're going to see anything in the range of 90 to 105%, and that's what we ask that tolerance to be in. And then the bottom portion here on the screenshot is simply, it's information for counties to show kind of where their sales counts are going, to see if you're getting more sales for this year compared to last year, or if your sales are going down. We provide a comparison for this year compared to the previous calendar year, and we also do 3 and 5 year comparisons. Again, this portion is just information for the county. There's no compliance decision based on the number of sales disclosures reported section on the report. So the next part of the compliance report actually pertains to the checks that we run to ensure that your data that you've submitted is indeed complete and correct. And the checks that are shown in this portion of the compliance report actually pertain or actually refer back to the different tabs that are on your issues workbook. So line number 18 is going to provide the overall total count of SDF records that you submitted in the Gateway Sales application side. So that's the total number of records that you submitted for 2021. And then lines number 19 through 21 are going to pertain to the records listed on the missing critical data tab on your issues workbook. In this particular case, it looks like there were 59 records, single parcel sale records missing critical data, and there were 2 multi-parcel sales missing critical data. So those combined, 59 plus 2, which would be 61. 61 records divided by 10,328, that's going to come up to 0.6% of your records missing critical data. The key thing is line 21 is probably the most important line on your compliance report, because this is going to be the line for this upcoming review cycle for your review of 2021 sales that the data team is going to base its compliance decision on. If line 21 exceeds 2%, your sales data will be deemed non-compliant. So you want to verify that that is going to be under 2% or less. In this particular case, this county's fine, it's 0.6%. And then moving down here through the other lines on this screenshot, lines 22 through 24 pertain to the single parcel sales duplicates tab on the issues workbook. We're going to provide a count of number of possible single parcel sales duplicates, which it looks like there's 50 here. And then from those 50 records we noted, we think there are 25 unique sales. And then we're going to provide a percentage of the single parcel sales duplicates compared to the total number of records in your data set. So here it's only 0.2%. This particular section, we're not basing any compliance decision on for your 2021 sales. One thing I will say though, it's possible that looking ahead to future review cycles, when we're doing 2022 sales review, 2023 sales review, we may start looking at these other percentages and these other checks. If they exceed 2%, then that might potentially cause the county to be non-compliant. But for this upcoming review cycle, it's only line 21 that you have to worry about. And then the last 3 lines here on this screenshot, lines 25 through 27, they pertain to the multi-parcel sales duplicate tab. And those again they're pulling record counts from the number of records on that tab of your issues workbook. Lines 28 and 29, they will correspond to the valuable consideration tab on your issues workbook. Again, those are records that are marked yes for valuable consideration, but list a sales price of $0. And then lines 30 through 36, those are checks that pertain to the Part 2 County Assessors check tab on the sales issues workbook. It's going to list the various checks that we're performing as part of that portion of our review. And then lines 37 through 40 will pertain to the Part 3 County Auditors portion on the sales issues workbook. That's that last tab that you may potentially notice on your sales issues workbook. So again, the items in this portion of the report, of the compliance report, will refer back to or make reference back to the records on the respective tabs on your issues workbook. And then once you get past that part of the compliance report, we provide a section of the compliance report for the parcel file match. So basically what this is going to show, it's going to show the status of your page 22 parcel file, which all counties will be listed as pending since you just recently received your compliance reports from the data team during the past few weeks, and all counties have been deemed pending with their real property data. So that will say pending in line 41. And then line 42, we typically like to see this value as close to 100% as possible. Essentially what that is saying, line 42 is saying that for any parcel numbers provided in your sales data, there should be a matching parcel number in the most recently submitted parcel file, which would be your page 22 parcel file that you submitted earlier this summer. It's possible that there might be mismatches, and that's most likely attributable to any splits that are noted in your sales data file. So if there are splits that are noted in your sales file, that usually means that there's going to be a new parcel number created as part of that split. And it's possible that due to the timing, that parcel number was not in your page 22 parcel file when you submitted it earlier this summer. So we do account for splits in your sales data. So after we factor in the number of splits and then we look at the remaining matches there, that should get us pretty darn close to 100%. And then our goal for line 42 is to have that value be as close to 100% as possible. 99.2% is a pretty good match there when doing the parcel file match. And finally, on the compliance report, there is a valid for trending section. This section is informational only. We don't base any compliance decisions on this particular portion of the compliance report, but we do highlight it for county assessors just so they kind of get a sense of what the amount of records in their data set that are actually deemed eligible for being used in the ratio study. Typically speaking, we have benchmarks. So for the total number of sales records that you submit to us, we generally recommend that at least 35% of those sales are marked valid for trending. And then the subset of that, for those records that are marked valuable for consideration, we generally like to see at least 55% or more of those records being marked valid for trending. Again, there's not a compliance decision. If you fall below those benchmarks, we're not going to deem your data as non-compliant. It's just that you might possibly have some follow-up questions from your assessment field rep if they're noticing very low numbers or percentages in the records marked valid for trending. But from our standpoint, we're not going to deem your data as non-compliant if they fall below those 35 and 55% benchmarks. So after we complete our review of your submitted sales disclosure data, if we determine that your data is non-compliant, then you'll have to go back and review the errors that are noted on your issues workbook and make any necessary corrections, and then resubmit your sales data for another round of reviews. So let's say you do that, and then once we go through and do another review of your resubmitted sales, if we deem that data set as compliant, which is what you ultimately want to achieve, that basically signals a go-ahead for our assessment team to proceed with their review and ultimate approval of the county's sales disclosure, or I'm sorry, the county's submitted ratio study. So you're seeking a compliance status from the data team on your submitted sales data so that the assessment division can then start reviewing your ratio study. And finally, one thing I wanted to point out regarding the sales disclosure data that you submit to us, we do make that information available on our website. There is an SDF online search database that anyone can access. You don't have to have an account to log into Gateway for it. It's made available to the general public, and it's going to include all the records that you've uploaded to the Gateway sales application site. To access that online search, it's the same URL for the Gateway sales application site. The only thing is at the very end, you would add a / and the word search at the end of it. So it's gatewaysdf.ifionline.org /search. And that will take you to the database where you can search on any 2021 sales that have been uploaded to the Gateway Sales application site so far. We also have available the old Gateway SDF database, where you could search on records that were submitted during the 2008 through 2020 timeframe. That database is still available. The URL is provided on this screenshot here, but you can also access that on the current SDF online search database. There's a little link over in the upper left-hand corner that says for prior year sales, for like 2020 sales, please click here. And that will take you to the previous Gateway SDF online search. Now, for any sales records that are prior to 2008, if the department receives any questions about those, we will typically say they need to contact the individual county to see if the county may still have any types of records for those old sales, because we do not have any records in our database that are earlier than 2008. 2008 is the earliest the online search will go back to. So with that said, I know we are brushing up to the end of our time here, but we still have a couple minutes for any questions that you may have. And I'm not seeing any in the chat, in the Q&A chat bubble right now, so maybe there aren't any questions. If you do have any questions that come to you, after the presentation is over, then you please feel free to email those to the data inbox. That email address is data@dlgf.in.gov. Also, we'll be posting, as Jenny noted, we'll be posting today's PowerPoint presentation, the FAQ document, the webinar survey, and the continuing education credit form for today's session to the department's webinar page. And also the department will be sending out a separate email correspondence with a link to this information. So with that said, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and I wish everyone a great rest of their day.